any university includes a test score that that university considers a strong score. And so what students can do is essentially look at the average SAT or ACT test scores at a university that they're interested in and make an informed decision about whether to share those scores or not based on, their probability of success compared with the university averages.
Now, let's say you take your test and the score is lower than what you anticipated. What's the next steps?
Sure. So there are some schools that have returned to requiring test scores. Of course, the University of Texas at Austin is one example. But there are still many schools out there that are test optional. And so students for whom those standardized tests are just going to be a big barrier, they can look to those test optional schools and they'll be able to find options for them.
Now, when would you recommend taking an ACT or an SAT more than once, and in what cases would that be appropriate?
Yeah, good question. I recommend most students take the test more than once. Research from the testing companies and pretty much all of our members at the National Test Prep Association could tell you students who test more than once tend to raise their score, especially if they're putting time and attention and study in between those tests. So if you're not happy with your first score or you got your PSAT scores back and you're a junior this year, in October, I think, you can make a plan, improve that score and take it again. Absolutely.
And I'm sure taking it more than once takes away some of those jitters that come with that first round of tests.
It's definitely true. We've seen anxiety spike around teenagers since the COVID pandemic. And I think getting those first time jitters out of the way with one official attempt before you can expect to kind of turn around and do your best on the second attempt, we see that happen all the time.
Now, as far as a question I thought was very interesting here, are SAT and ACT scores still the most reliable, like AI proof measure of college readiness?
Yeah, so the data suggests that they are. I mean, when we look at grades nowadays, grades are very inflated. So about 84% of college freshmen had at least an A minus average in high school. So what that means is that grades, even A grades, are not necessarily distinguishing students in the way that they have in the past. When this data started to be tracked in 1966, 22% of college freshmen had an A average in high school. So we're looking at a situation where grades don't tell the same story they did. Part of that is AI. Part of it is just kind of grading as a cultural practice. What is considered an A now is not what was considered an A 10, 20, 30 years ago. The other piece of it is the subjective factors of the application, like letters of recommendation, like college essays, where students can use AI directly to impact those. Something like a standardized test, where students are in a supervised environment, where the data suggests that these are the strongest predictors of who's going to do well at college. That means that colleges can rely on these to give accurate information about student readiness, even with so much changing in our society.
Now, as far as studying goes, it can be a very daunting task, as we know, but for those taking the test for the first time, where do you recommend starting when it comes to like just getting your ground on what you should be looking at? How do you create that study plan?
Sure. So the very first thing to do is to take a practice test. If you took the PSAT at school, then that can suffice as an initial practice test. I recommend also trying an ACT if you took the PSAT because colleges accept these two tests equally. Students can make an informed decision about which one to take based on which format they prefer, based on which one they score higher on initially. And then from there, you look at where you essentially missed the most questions and you focus your study in those areas. Another great idea is to go to nationaltestprep.org. You can look through our member directory and you can sort locally to find, options in your area of local test prep providers.
Now, for the parents who are investing in tutoring services and the test prep programs, the changes that are coming, how can they pay for them? That's, I know, a big one for families. For
Sure.
those who are unfamiliar, walk me through what the 529 plan is.
Sure. So historically, the 529 plan has been a college savings plan where parents can put away tax advantaged money to save for students' college. With the act that was passed this past summer, families can now spend that money more broadly on education. So it's gone from a college savings plan to more of a broad education savings plan. So you can pay for things like the registration fees for the SAT or ACT, or even tutoring in school subjects or test prep to help your students beyond the classroom.
So, walk me through what the One Big Beautiful Bill did to make those changes for parents.
Essentially, it just expanded the categories of expenses that could be paid from one of those 529 plans to go from just college related expenses to other supplemental education expenses like tutoring.
So, how can families leverage those funds specifically for tutoring or just test prep?
Sure. So if we're talking about the specific mechanics of how the plans work, I recommend talking to an accountant, not a test prep professional. But what I can tell you is that, you can look up online on the IRS's website what categories are included and make your plan appropriately.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much for joining us and just allowing us to dig a little bit deeper into what all this is and how kids can best plan out what they have next. Thank you, Jim. Jim Wismer, joining us with a look at what all you need to know as you're planning your next steps for your future. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Of course, you too. All right, y'all. There you go. And if you missed this conversation, make sure you follow us on our East Texas Now app. Make sure you download it, turn on the notifications, and there you can revisit that conversation that we had with Jim. Just how you can best prepare you, your